SpongeBob Sponge on the Run is directed by Tim Hill and is the third SpongeBob movie, believe it or not. And the plot for this movie is that SpongeBob and Patrick yet again have to go on a road trip, but this time to find Gary, who has once again been snail-napped. Now, I don't talk about SpongeBob nearly as much as I should do on this channel, which is strange because I have and always will love SpongeBob. It's one of my favourite TV shows of all time. I loved it as a kid and I love going back to it now, more grown up, and discovering things that I maybe didn't get as a child. And I feel like it's also one of those shows that can appeal to literally any age. There's the slapstick, cartoony humour that is there for children, but there are other things beyond that is there for older viewers to appreciate and for them to find funny, which is why I love the show so much. It caters to literally everyone, and you can find stuff to appreciate about it, and you can find stuff that will be funny to you no matter what age you are. Which is why I found this movie incredibly disappointing. This movie feels like a mere shell of what SpongeBob should be. It's almost like this film is made by people that had only seen 2 or 3 key episodes from the show, and the executives were like, right, we're going to hand the reins over to you now, and I feel like you've seen enough episodes to get a gist of the show, so we're just going to let you make a film based off of that. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like the SpongeBob I've known and loved all my life. It really doesn't feel like that. And I'm so ashamed. I mean, I didn't go into this movie with high hopes anyway, because the trailer for this movie was rather iffy, to be honest. But there was a little bit of my brain that was like, right, this SpongeBob, what's the worst that could happen? But this film does feel like a betrayal. It really does. Because it feels like, it looks like SpongeBob, but it just feels like SpongeBob that's been watered down, and almost as if they're catering for the youngest demographic possible, and also catering it more for people that have never seen SpongeBob before. Which is stupid, because the only people that are going to watch this movie are fans of the show in the first place. I mean, I agree with Squidward by saying that this movie is 100%
mediocre?
I feel like the SpongeBob movies are just getting weaker and weaker with each one. The first one from 2004 still holds up incredibly well. It's brilliantly written, it's absolutely hilarious, and it's a ton of fun no matter how many times you've seen it. The second one, I can't fully comment on because I haven't seen all of it, but from what I have seen, it still looks like more of the same. That, like, just to me that is, anyway. But this movie feels like it's taken SpongeBob and just thrown everything that's supposed to work out the window and just really kind of scraped it down to its basic core, but kind of made all the things that are enjoyable about the show and even the first 2 films, and just kind of made them not as interesting as they should be. This movie does feel very rushed, it feels rather sloppy in a lot of areas, and overall the best word I can say to describe this movie is underwhelming, from almost every aspect. The plot is not that interesting, it's something that the show has already done before and in a much, much better way. That massive episode that was, I think it was even a 2-parter in the show, where Gary went missing and SpongeBob and Patrick had to look for him. That whole episode was so well done in the show, even to the point where it did actually choke me up as a child. Like, I genuinely did have feelings for that episode, and it was very touching. And even now, thinking to that song, Gary Come Home, still puts a lump in my throat because it was so effective. But this movie just feels like a blatant attempt to kind of go, right, what's something that worked in the show, let's redo it again, but nowhere near as good. The CG animation in this movie, which has a slight stop-motion look to it, works for the sake of the film. I'm not a massive fan of it because, again, it doesn't look like SpongeBob, it just looks like someone's attempt at trying to make a SpongeBob-related thing. So, as a fan of the show and the traditional art style of the show, I don't particularly love it, but for the sake of the movie and the tone and style that the movie is going for, I think it works pretty well. And there are a few moments in particular where the animation does get its time to shine, and it is genuinely quite good. But for the most part, it's either something you're going to love or you're going to hate, and I think for the sake of the movie, it's not that bad. There are also some specific gags and jokes in the movie that work pretty well. Nothing that genuinely made me laugh, which is something that I am very annoyed about, because no matter how good or bad a SpongeBob episode or even some of the previous movies have been, there are always things in it that will make me laugh. And that's another thing that the movie does a lot of, which did kind of annoy me a little bit as the more they did it, is that it will set up what should be a really good joke, but then they'll over-explain the joke in a way that just not makes it funny anymore. It's almost like everything from the writing aspect of this movie was so dumbed down that it loses the self-referential, tongue-in-cheek nature of SpongeBob's humour. And whenever it does try to be self-referential and almost kind of break the fourth wall, it just feels like it's forcing it down your throat. And for everything that does work in this movie, there's like a million things that don't. For example, you have Keanu Reeves in this extended cameo as a sage. Not just like a mystic sage, but a literal sage. And I thought that pun was quite good. And he is genuinely quite good in the movie. And for what he does in the film, he's pretty good. However, though that is a positive, a negative that comes with that is that the dream sequence in which he is introduced goes on for way too long. Like, it takes up way too much time that it really should have. And I really don't know why it goes on for that long. And yeah, I feel like that this movie is just a perfect summary of that. For every small little thing that does work, there's like 1,000,001 things that kind of annoy me. But yeah, this movie really wasn't great. It was very underwhelming. I would say it was actually quite boring in places as well. And there are a few things, especially if you're a fan of SpongeBob, that kind of mess up the continuity of the show as well. Again, that's why it goes back to the whole point that I made, where it feels like this movie was written and made by people that had only seen like 1 or 2 episodes of the show and didn't really know what they were getting themselves in for. I mean, if you want to give this movie a go, then, you know, go ahead. But if you're a massive SpongeBob fan, I can see a lot of people not being happy or pleased by this film, which is why I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I was very, very much thinking of making it a lower number than that, but it does have some slight redeeming qualities to it. But overall, this is a very underwhelming and pretty bad movie. So guys, that was my review for the new SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. I hope you enjoyed it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review more than I did watching the film anyway. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye.